leptin resistance. What is leptin? What does it do? What does leptin resistance mean? Do you have it? How can you tell? What can you do about it? All these things we're going to be answering today's episode. I'm going to be explaining all about leptin. We'll go through a quiz, which will help you identify if this could be an issue for you or not. And we'll talk about the opportunity to get involved in an exciting research study that will show that non-pharmaceutical interventions for leptin can really work. Stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to the Rejuvenate podcast. I'm your host, Kruse Hawks, and I am here with my co-host, Elwin Robinson, the creator and founder of Genetic Insights and the author of the Rejuvenate Blueprint. And so all of our lovely listeners, thank you always for your time and for showing up. And please remember, helping our sponsors helps us continue to bring this information to you free of charge. And so as we are always providing you as most up-to-date information on health, wellness, and optimization, please make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button so that you don't miss an episode and that we can keep bringing these wonderful episodes to you. So as Elwin just introduced, we are discussing leptin, and I am really looking forward to taking this quiz. So Elwin, I'm going to hand it over to you today to kick us off, and let's explore leptin resistance.
Yeah, so leptin is known as the satiety hormone. That's the main thing about it. Some people actually claim it's the master hormone regulator of the whole body, and we'll talk about those claims a little bit later. So meaning, other hormones you may have heard of, estrogen, testosterone, all those kind of things, cortisol, that insulin, which of course is very important for blood sugar and often focused on by diabetics, people with prediabetes, all those other ones are potentially regulated ultimately by leptin. So leptin's super important. If you haven't heard of it or you don't really know much about it, then you're not alone. And it's partly because despite its potential primary importance in the whole hormonal system, it was only discovered relatively recently, like 1994 in reality. Which is much later than all the other hormones, certainly all the other ones that I mentioned, all the other major hormones. And there potentially is some conspiracy around as well why you haven't heard of it, like maybe information about it has been suppressed for various reasons, which we'll go into again a bit later. But let's cover the basics first, I would say.
Right. So then can you talk to us about all things leptin? What is it? Why is it important to us? And what do we need to know about it?
Yeah. So it's the satiety hormone. Before I recently really dove into it, my understanding was reasonably limited, but one thing I understood is that it kind of opposes another hunger hormone called ghrelin. So ghrelin is a hormone that increases your appetite, and leptin is a hormone that decreases your appetite. Ghrelin, some people are kind of aware of in certain spaces because it also strongly stimulates growth hormone. So this is why often people fast, because then it stimulates ghrelin, which is hunger, which then stimulates growth hormone. And, people do that for performance issues, athletic issues, stuff like that. And so leptin is the satiety, I've had enough food hormone, but it's actually a little bit more profound than that. But first of all, let me address how it's different from GLP-1, because GLP-1 is far better known at the moment.
Through those weight loss drugs that are out there.
GLP-1 is a hormone that makes you feel satiety kind of, but not really. Basically, it makes your stomach full, and it makes your stomach empty more slowly if it is increased, if it is agonized. Whereas leptin actually makes you feel satiated, like on a brain level. So this is, to me, if a person has an excess amount of appetite, if I had an excess amount of appetite, I would far rather work on the leptin level than the GLP-1 level, at least initially, because the GLP-1 level is kind of forcing the stomach to not empty, which is a very brute force way of making someone feel full, and it can potentially cause problems. The side effects of drugs that stimulate GLP-1 are becoming more and more well known. Whereas, and it's not really the problem. So if a person feels a desire to eat more than they need, then I would say the root cause of that is actually leptin resistance and possibly a couple of other hormone imbalances, which we cover in the Hormetics Weight Optimization System, which I'll talk more about later. But the idea that forcing the stomach to empty more slowly is the key to overeating is, to me, fundamentally false, because we have discovered leptin, because we have discovered there is actually a hormone that makes you feel genuinely satisfied and satiated without slowing down your intestinal emptying, which can potentially gastric emptying, which can potentially cause a huge host of problems down the line, which I've talked about in different episodes. So you're hearing more about it in the news, so I won't go into it again here. But what I want to focus on is that there is a better way, at least that you should start with, which is the genuine feeling in the brain of satiety.
Can I ask you a quick question, Elwin? Why would somebody develop leptin resistance?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, let's define what it is. So if leptin is a satiety hormone, which they discovered it was, the first thought that they had is, okay, well, great, let's give people more leptin. Then that will help them be satiated. Then they won't eat as much. And given that we've got an obesity epidemic, that's obviously an important thing to do. But what they found is, when they did that with people who were already overweight specifically, it did not work. And that's when they realized the problem is not lack of leptin. In fact, fat cells actually produce more leptin. The issue is the resistance to leptin. And the term leptin resistance really comes more from insulin resistance. And insulin resistance we'll talk about in probably the next episode or a forthcoming episode. Insulin is another hormone where there's not a lack of it in the bloodstream. The problem is that the cells that it's supposed to go into become less sensitized to it. And so the same thing happens with leptin. As you put in more body weight, specifically more body fat, your body actually produces more leptin. But the challenge is that your body cells are less and less sensitized to that leptin. I don't think it's fully understood exactly why that happens, Chrissy, based on my own research. The simplistic view of it is that basically just because there's more, like, your body down regulates the sensitivity of the receptors, which does make sense. But it doesn't really make sense to me why it would over down regulate so much that a person's appetite then went down. I think there's more to that. And to be honest, I don't think it's fully understood exactly why. But on a functional level, we could say it is as simple as that. The more leptin that you have floating around, plus a bunch of other factors, which we're going to get into, the less that the body is sensitive to that leptin. And so the less your brain is going to get that signal saying that you are actually full. So just to describe what it is, so when your leptin levels are elevated, it's the hypothalamus specifically. So there's this thing called the HPA axis or the HPTA axis that you may have heard of. Hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal, or sometimes they add thyroid in there. So it's this key axis for energy production and hormonal regulation throughout the whole body. And the hypothalamus is this small area of the brain connected to this gland, the pituitary, which is kind of the master regulator. And the hypothalamus also gets signals from the body. So the hormones floating around the body, there's this thing called the blood-brain barrier that stops most stuff getting into the brain, but the hypothalamus kind of has a gate that allows stuff to get in so it can get the signals from the body. Anyway, so the hypothalamus is the one that gets dysregulated, and it gets into this thing where it perceives that there's this state of starvation, which then increases the appetite. So it's the hypothalamus dysregulation more than anything, I would say, is the answer to that question. But exactly why it gets dysregulated, I'm going to give you a few theories to it, but I don't think it's fully understood yet, to be honest. Let's clarify. I think it's quite well understood why, but I think what's less understood is how, like the exact mechanism by which it happens. But as I said, if we understand all the things that contribute to it and we undo them and we do other stuff, we can still resolve it. So it's something that there's a disruptive feedback loop between the hormones in the body and the hypothalamus, which is this part of the brain that gets the signals from the hormones. So let's talk about symptoms. We'll talk about common symptoms, and I'll give a quiz in a second. So common symptoms: constant hunger, which actually has a name. I don't know if you use this, Chrissy, but hyperphagia is what they call it, even after eating. And some people have this to an absurd level. I remember when I used to work in a retirement home preparing food, God, 20 years ago now. There was one that I went to where I remember one person, it was a man he wasn't even massively overweight, but he just had this ability to eat an extraordinary amount of food. Like, he had to be limited. Like, he just didn't seem to have a switch in his brain that says that's enough now. And he was in a home where the other residents were mainly women, and a lot of them would like not eat very much. I don't know if it was like a sociological thing or something of like competing to see who could eat the least, but he would just basically, if you allowed him, he'd go up and hoover up everyone else's food, and he would eat like 10 plates of food. Like, I don't know how it was even possible in terms of the stomach capacity. Maybe he could have done with some GLP-1 agonists, to be honest, in his case. But the thing that's most striking to me was always like, how does his brain not say that's enough now? And that is really the leptin thing. That's the dysregulation that we're talking about. Leptin resistance does go hand in hand with insulin resistance. Not always. I've absolutely seen people with one and not the other, but it often does. And so as well as an inability to stop eating, it does often come with more insulin resistance signs, like craving for sweets, craving for carbohydrates, craving for like highly refined, high calorie food, often referred to as, junk food. And that's because, again, there's this kind of trick going on in the brain where it actually perceives that there is a caloric deficit going on. So not only does it want to make you eat a lot, it doesn't want to make you eat a lot of, I don't know, salad necessarily. It's going to make you want to eat a lot of like high density calories often, and carbohydrate calories, because carbohydrates are like the easiest fuel source for your body to turn into fuel generally. So yeah. And it also relates to other stuff. So it also links to fatigue, low energy, potential mood dysregulation. I associate it with depression specifically, although it can relate to all kinds of mood issues potentially. And yeah, it can connect to other hormones. It can connect to insulin. In a way that I've already described. Often the resistance to one will lead to resistance to the other. It can relate to estrogen. Fat cells produce more estrogen than other cells, and fat cells produce more leptin than other cells. So those often go together, but not necessarily. And it definitely can relate to high cortisol. I see that connection as well. Cortisol will... So cortisol is created by the adrenal glands, but it can interfere with leptin signaling. Dr. Jack Kruse, his work we'll talk about a little bit later, he talks about testing cortisol as one of the primary things that he uses to look at leptin in terms of lab tests. He also talks about looking at reverse T3, and sure enough, leptin is also related to thyroid function. How does this all tie together? I'll just give my theory on this before we go to the next section. I would say it all ties together because there's like a hibernation mode thing going on with leptin resistance. Similarly with low thyroid function, similarly with insulin resistance, all of them kind of relate to the body feeling as if there's not enough energy available, but stroke that it needs to make energy available in storage. So I think that's part of it that is not kind of recognized by the mainstream as much. That like, why would the body go into a fat accumulation mode if there's already more fat? It doesn't really seem logical. But I think one of the reasons for it is that it's going into a hibernation mode. And so it's anticipating that there's going to be less calories available. It's anticipating that it has to store some calories. And I think that's why some people talk about its connection to light and light cycles, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Genetic Insights provides cutting-edge, affordable DNA testing, giving you access to over 500 health reports that can help you in 3 key ways. They may be able to resolve your existing health challenges even when nothing else has worked. Using simple lifestyle changes, their reports can help you reduce your risk of developing future health challenges that you may be genetically predisposed to. And they can help you feel more confident in your health by showing you where you are genetically strong. Unlike most other genetic health testing companies, Genetic Insights tests over 83 million different variations in your genes, guaranteeing 99.7% accuracy across all of their DNA reports. They cover almost every aspect of health, including digestive issues, cardiovascular health, weight loss, hormonal and blood sugar balance, as well as nutrient needs, allergies and intolerances, and so much more. Using their system is quick and easy, and reading the reports is simple. If you've done an Ancestry DNA test, you can simply download your raw DNA data, upload it to the Genetic Insights platform, and within a few hours you will have access to genetic reports which give you a risk score for each specific issue and scientifically validated recommendations based on your individual genetic profile. Everything in your reports are based on scientific studies, and there are citation links throughout every report. If you are serious about optimizing your health and wellness and feeling great, then getting access to your Genetic Insights reports may be the most important health investment you will ever make. In the reports, not only will you gain insights into how to overcome existing health challenges and avoid future issues, you'll also discover which types of dietary, lifestyle, and even supplement protocols are best for your unique genetics. To get your unique genetic health reports, go to geneticinsights.co and use code Rejuvenate to get 20% off today. That's geneticinsights.co using coupon code Rejuvenate to get 20% off today. Will this hibernation mode, because I know we recently just did an episode on depression and the dorsal vagal theory, will that also be potentially having an impact here?
Yeah, that's why I think it's more likely to lead to depression than other mental health things, honestly. Yeah. I mean, people often cycle between depression and anxiety for reasons we talked about in that episode. Like stress and anxiety feels like an upgrade when you're depressed. But a kind of overall tone of depression is what I expect, to be honest, with someone with leptin resistance. They tend to go hand in hand. It's because, the body is going into an energy conservation state. That's really one of the most crucial things about it, to me. So, if we can just look at now I'm ready to answer your question. Let's talk about the mainstream causes of it. And then I'll talk about some of the alternative theories, and then we'll do the quiz that everyone can follow along with. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So, high body fat is one of them. We talked about that theory already. Chronic inflammation is a big one as well. So again, the exact how of this, from what I can see, is not fully understood or agreed upon. But basically, when you are in a state of chronic low-grade inflammation, which can be due to all kinds of factors. There could be a genetic component to it, but more likely I'd say the number one candidate for it is not some kind of underlying toxin that hasn't been addressed. Probably number two would be some kind of chronic infection that hasn't been addressed. Those are really common. But there can be other factors as well that are significant, like nutritional deficiencies, for instance, various lifestyle factors, especially lack of sleep and light environment, which again we'll get to because it's a whole other separate theory in a minute. And then even emotional factors can make a difference as well. Emotional stroke neurological. So, meaning, for instance, if someone is always focusing on and feeling upset, they're going to be more inflamed than if they're always focusing on and feeling happy. So it can be a few different things that cause that low-grade inflammation. I guess it is its own whole subject and its own whole episode. But the point is that once you have it, it messes with the leptin sensitivity, the correct function. And in terms of what is going on in terms of how, that's probably getting closer to an actual answer to me than the whole thing of, it's just because you have more fat cells and more leptin and your body gets less sensitized to the leptin. That on its own doesn't make sense to me. but the tendency for chronic inflammation to interfere with signaling and chronic inflammation in the brain and the hypothalamus specifically, especially if a person has accumulation of toxins in the brain and specifically the hypothalamus. And again, just to explain, the brain generally has a blood-brain barrier to protect it from toxins, but not the hypothalamus. So this is how the brain could be generally protected from toxins, and yet the hypothalamus is not, because it has to allow in large particles so it can assess hormones, which are often large particles in the general bloodstream of the body. And so toxins can absolutely get into the hypothalamus, potentially create low-grade inflammation that's constant but not severe and acute and requiring immediate medical attention. And that's where I think is a better clue as to where this dysregulation could come from. Although there's other potential factors as well. In research, high intake of fructose, especially refined fructose, has been linked to leptin dysregulation, leptin resistance. I think the research probably not on like eating apples or something like that. My understanding is it is like things like high fructose corn syrup, but I don't think the research has been done. From what I have seen, people who only eat fruit, for instance, they do kind of eat all day, but they still generally don't put on weight. It's just hard to get enough calories from just fruit. So I don't think that it is purely fructose, despite that being what the research says. I think it's more like the refined fructose, probably. Processed foods in general are linked to it. That could be for several mechanisms. Could be due to the inflammation, that all the toxins that are often found in processed foods, as well as the tendency to maybe create insulin resistance. There could be a bunch of different reasons for that. Poor sleep and stress are related to inflammation. Generally, when the body doesn't sleep enough, the inflammatory kind of cascade is more likely to increase, and if the body does sleep enough, then it can recover from that. Sleep doesn't resolve like if it's a toxin or an infection necessarily, but it will definitely help. When you sleep, your body's lymphatic system, including the glymphatic system in the brain, will drain more toxins when you sleep enough and well. And then when you sleep well, your immune system functions substantially better. It's more able to deal with a chronic infection if that is why you're inflamed, and it's more likely to become balanced and not excessively inflammatory if it's simply a dysregulation of the immune system. So sleep can definitely help. There can be genetic factors. One of the things, obviously, I have a company, Genetic Insights, that looks at that in people. And I had a client recently, for instance, who was interested in this outcome, losing weight, had been overweight their whole life. And usually I start with genetics, but for various practical reasons, in this case, I started with blood tests. And I was very surprised to see that basically all of their hormones were like pretty optimal. It's like, that's
surprising.
Like, very surprising.
Yeah.
I'd say pretty optimal. I mean, insulin was the only one that was a little bit, but insulin was like mid-range. It certainly wasn't like an obvious one. And then I looked at the genetics afterwards, and I was like, oh, a tendency for higher leptin. And it's like, and it did explain it. But leptin is not usually tested for in blood tests, although it is possible. The blood tests are also not super reliable. So actually, the quiz that I'm about to share with you, which I created along with Dr. Miriam Mikitsky, who's an MD, often a quiz, like asking a bunch of questions, is actually more reliable anyway in the blood test. When it comes to leptin, with insulin, blood test is pretty reliable. But anyway, so sometimes genetic factors are significant, even if someone really seems healthy in every other way, as to why they still can't lose weight or still can't stop overeating. So yeah, genetic factors definitely potentially. And then there's more and more research these days on the microbiome and other environmental toxins, although that's really early days. I have a couple of research links here, but I don't think it's worth going through it in this episode. Maybe another one if people ask for it. And then, yeah, so Dr. Kruse. So I just want to mention Dr. Kruse. I think he's considered fairly fringe. And I don't know if I necessarily endorse everything he says, but he's the one who really helped me to understand the importance of leptin, and he has a perspective on what causes it, which is very different for the mainstream, and I think relevant and accurate from what I have seen in my research and also from anecdotal experience. So I wanted to share this with people as well. I don't know if I'd make it the central part of leptin. I would include the more mainstream perspectives as well, but it's something that's definitely worth considering. And so it's leptin's relation to the circadian rhythm specifically, and light exposure. And this is where a little bit of conspiracy stuff gets in as well that I mentioned earlier. And so it turns out, according to Dr. Kruse, that a lack of natural light and an excess of unnatural light, especially blue light in general, and especially at night, can really mess with the leptin system as well. And this is one of the reasons why people tend to put on more weight during the winter and the summer, to me. And this is one of the reasons why people tend to have less of an appetite in the summer, because I think people often think, the sun is energizing me. And it's kind of true, but it's a very metaphorical way of looking at it. It's like, well, what exact mechanism is it providing energy by? And perhaps you could talk about melanin, and melanin has some energy generating capacity, and UV light stimulates an increase of the production of deuterium depleted water, which is another way of measuring the currency of energy. So there could be other reasons why we could say that someone has more energy when it is bright and sunny, and they are spending time outside when it's bright and sunny. Doesn't matter how bright and sunny it is if you're indoors, not out there. But yeah, so there's other reasons why you could say someone feels energized by the sun or relaxed by the sun, because often it requires energy to relax. But in terms of the appetite when there's more sun, as I said, this leads me more to the hibernation thing that I was saying earlier. So here's my theory on it. My theory on it is, as you have less and less light in general, your body assumes that it is winter or coming up on winter, and so it needs to start holding on to calories and conserving energy. And I believe that is not the only, but the overlooked real root cause of leptin resistance, even if people are doing everything else right, even if they're eating well and all that kind of stuff. It's because they are signaling to their body through their light environment that it is not summer. And this is hard for people to understand. They're like, okay, when I'm not outside very much, but I'm inside, like I'm in an office maybe with bright fluorescent lighting, bright LED lighting. I'm not really, it's not that dark. But here's the thing. Obviously, one of the things is that inside you don't have a full spectrum of light like you do outside. But before I even address that, I just want to address this. It's very rare that any outdoor environment has as much light, which is a thing that can be measured. The metric to use to measure light is called lux. And you can get a lux meter. Sometimes your phone, you can get an app and it will do a reasonable job, although an actual meter is cheap and does a better job. But you can, like I'm in a bright room right now. I've got several lights on me. I've got one behind me. It seems bright, but this is going to be less than 100 lux. If I step outside right now, it's a sunny day. It's probably like 15,000 lux. If it were a really dingy day where everyone would complain, typical British winter day, like it's dark and gloomy and all the rest, it's still going to be 5,000. It's so much brighter. There's so much more light outside. So it's definitely quality of light, but it's also just quantity. So if you do not go outside much, unless you're in a very unusual indoor situation, there is just more light outside than there is inside. And so just the lack of light, even before we start talking about types, even the lack of light that most people are exposed to is signaling to their body that it's winter or getting closer to winter and it's time to start storing, conserving energy. That's my theory on it. Then there is the types of light, which is a whole other conversation and where it gets a little bit complicated. And I've done a full episode on light before. But the one thing I'll just mention is blue light. So blue light is not necessarily telling your body to go into hibernation. That's kind of a separate thing. But what blue light does is it raises cortisol. It raises stress. And so as we talked about earlier, like even the mainstream understanding is that cortisol and stress contribute to an increase leptin resistance. And so that combination of not enough actual light, not enough full spectrum of light, puts your body into a kind of hibernation mode, but then all the extra blue light puts your body into a stress mode. And so it's like you're in winter and you're stressed. Now, why would you be stressed in winter if we think going back to our ancestors for a very long time?
Not enough food.
That's the most likely reason, right? And so it tells your body to go into a fat storage state. So I hope, I know it took a while to build up to that, but I hope that ties it all together. And why I think that ultimately the kind of hibernation light thing is the most overlooked part of it. But everything contributes, And so why would a toxin or an infection also do it? Well, if you have a toxic exposure or if you have an infection, your body, again, should be going into an energy conservation state. Like, the only reason not to be in an energy conserving state is because everything's good, basically. So long as everything's not good, which includes all the stuff I talked about earlier, nutritional deficiencies, emotional trauma, blah, 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 everything, all of that is basically a sign that everything is not good. And when you feel like everything is, or your body feels rather, that everything is not good, then it goes into energy conservation, which is fat conservation, which is, among other things, leptin resistance. So I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. I mean, and I really like that you've broken down the theory of the light and going into hibernation, even though it's high summer right now as we're recording this. Again, there's a lot of people that don't step outside or I know it is summer, it's getting a lot lighter earlier here, but sometimes people don't get exposed to the different rays. So it makes sense that the body is thinking, oh, it's because it's just going off the information we're supplying it with.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. And in terms of my anecdotal experience with this, I think I'll share that. So what I'll do next for people is go through a quiz about to help you self-identify if this may be something that is relevant for you. Then I'll talk about what you can do about it. Then I'm going to talk about some of the studies with some of the ingredients that I found to be very effective for this. And then I think during that, I'll tell my anecdote of how I personally, discovered the importance of leptin resistance. And then we'll kind of wrap it up after that with an invitation to participate in our trial. So, okay. First of all, before any of that, though, is this actually relevant to you? Is the crucial question. So obviously you can do this quiz yourself. I encourage you, even maybe friends and family, even if they're not someone who's going to listen to a whole podcast episode about this or maybe anything, get them to do just this bit that we're about to do and follow along and ask them those questions so you can help them identify if this is a thing that they might be suffering with. Okay, 14 questions of all. With the actual quiz, when that's ready, there'll be a weighting system. Like some questions will be worth more than others, but don't worry about that for now. Let's just see how many questions you answer. The strongest two. Generally, there's like 4 options. So there's never, occasionally, frequently, or all the time. And so with each question, if you just write down, if it's never, just write down 0. If it's occasionally, write down 1. If it's frequently, write down 2. And if it's all the time, write down 3. And then based on your score at the end, we'll give you an indication. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, so just to recap, never 0, occasionally 1, frequently 2, all the time 3.
Yeah. So write down, or if you're on your iPhone, you can write it in notes or whatever it may be, and just write down, and we'll do a simplified score. This is definitely simplified. It'll be more sophisticated when we have all this built. But for now, this is what we've got, and I hope it's useful. Okay. Leptin resistance. Question number 1. Do you feel full and satiated after an average-sized meal? I realize this may be a little bit context dependent, like if you haven't eaten all day, it's less likely than if you have, but let's say on average, and this is why we say never, occasionally, frequently, all the time, right? Do you never feel satisfied by an average size meal? Do you always feel satisfied by an average size meal, or is it somewhere in between? Write down your score. Number 2, are you able to keep to a strict portion-controlled, low-calorie meal plan? Now, maybe you've never attempted it. If you haven't, then rate it on what you think you would be able to do based on, your experience in general. Never, occasionally, frequently, all the time. Number 3, have you experienced unexplained weight gain? Never happened to you, happens to you all the time, or anything in between. Number 4, how often do you crave high-calorie foods? We talked about this earlier. Calorie-dense foods, processed foods, generally high carbs, often high fat as well. How often do you crave them? Not just want them, crave them. Never, occasionally, frequently, all the time. 0 to 3. Question number 5. How often do you feel fatigued or tired? Never, occasionally, frequently, or all the time. Number 6. How often do you have a low motivation for physical activity? Not quite the same as the earlier one. Fatigue can also be mental. So this is about your physical energy. Never, occasionally, frequently, all the time. Number 7. After finishing a meal, how often do you crave a dessert or something sweet? So never, occasionally, frequently, or all the time. Question number 8. Do you eat more than you think you should? Never, occasionally, frequently, or all the time. Question number 9. How much time do you spend in front of a screen per day, including work and home? So for this one, there's a time rather than never, occasionally, etc. So if it's less than an hour, give yourself 0 points. If it's 1 to 3 hours, give yourself 1 point. If it's 3 to 6 hours, give yourself 2 points. And if it's over 6 hours, give yourself 3 points. This, of course, some people aren't fully aware, but if you have to be in front of a screen all day at work, 8 hours a day, for instance, it's definitely over 6. If you don't know, you can look at your device. I know with an iPhone, it makes it easy. You can have a look in screen time and it will tell you. You can do that for each of your devices and add them up if you're not sure. Question number 10. How much time do you spend outside during the day? This one, the same thing. During the day means while there is any daylight. Could even be dawn or dusk. So 0 points, less than an hour. 1 point, 1 to 3 hours. 2 points, 3 to 6 hours. And 3 points, over 6 hours. So again, for instance, if you have a job where you're outside 8 hours a day, then you're over 6 hours. Simple. Otherwise, you may have to do a little bit of calculation. Question 11. How difficult would you find it to fast for 24 hours? So I phrased it as would you, but obviously if you have done it, base your answer on that. So 0 would be not difficult at all. Up to 3, which would be, impossible. 1 would be, a bit difficult. 2 would be moderately difficult. 3 would be extremely difficult. Question 12. How often do you crave sweets and high-carb snacks? So 0 points for never, all the way up to 3 points for all the time. All the time doesn't have to be 24 hours a day, but, if it's many times throughout the day, that classifies all the time. Question 13. Have you noticed an increase in belly fat? So no would be 0 points, up to 100%, definitely would be 3 points. A little bit would be 1 point, moderately 2 points. And lastly, last question. This is probably the most crucial one in a way. I've left it for last here. How much time do you spend per day thinking about food? And 0 points, less than an hour. 1 point, 1 to 3 hours. 2 points, 3 to 6 hours. And 3 points, 6+ hours. I know that this one is hard to quantify. So we could say maybe If you're thinking about food all day, it's 3 points. If you never think about food except for when you're eating it, that's 0 points. If you only start thinking about it, when you haven't eaten for a few hours, maybe 1 point. And if you think about it a lot, but it depends on a bunch of factors, then maybe 2 points, something like that. So that's the quiz. Add up all your scores with the simplified ways that we've done it here. So as I said, I didn't want to complicate this one too much, but some questions here are worth more than others in terms of weighting. But just to keep things simple, to give you an idea, we'll score them all the same. So the maximum you can have here is 42 points. The minimum you can have is 0. If you have so add all your scores up, pause if necessary in order to do that. Okay, I'll assume you've done it. So add all your scores up. 0 to 10 means unlikely to have leptin resistance. 10 to 20, you may have mild leptin resistance. 20 to 30, you may have moderate leptin resistance. And over 30 up to 42 would indicate severe leptin resistance. Now, I just want to address the elephant in the room. First of all, I realize that there are a bunch of questions there that could apply to something else. I get that. Like fatigue could definitely apply to thyroid. The sugar cravings could definitely apply to insulin. I understand that. And that's why it's the constellation of everything together that makes up. That's why it's not one or the other. I will say, though, if you're like, oh, well, those things indicate insulin resistance, not leptin resistance, Owen, well, here's the thing. They often go together, right? And so if you only answered yes to the questions that relate to insulin resistance, but not to any of the others, then you would get like a mild leptin resistance score at most, which is appropriate because if you have strong insulin resistance, you probably have at least mild insulin resistance. So I believe it does all make sense. As I say, this is carefully created along with Dr. Miriam, a medical doctor with plenty of experience in this sphere. I don't know if it will be before or after this episode, but we'll put out an episode where we go through these quizzes together and we talk about them in more detail. But I wanted this to be just a pure episode about leptin, and we'll do another one, a pure episode about each hormonal imbalance. So any questions or comments, Chrissy? And did you give yourself a score there?
So yeah, because some questions like the one question that come up, like how often do you crave sweets and high carb snacks? Because I was like, I don't necessarily I'm not a sweet tooth. I have more of the savory, so it'd be like more salty things. It's sometimes it's carbs, but it's more, I lean towards like the snacks like potato chips and those kind of things. So that would be synonymous with that question, correct?
Kind of. I mean, that's definitely synonymous. That's why I asked two different versions of it. So where was it about the processed foods? Which question was that?
High calorie foods, question 4.
Thank you. Yes. So you would answer yes to that one. But yeah, the sweetness is more specifically to insulin, but it ties to leptin, like we talked about. Often relate to hypoglycemia, but hypoglycemia is caused by high insulin, obviously, because insulin lowers blood sugar. That's kind of a judgment call. But if it's really salty, then but calorie dense, like you were just describing there, high carb, you could argue that you could go in there anyway, or not. I would say that's kind of borderline. But you would definitely say yes to question 4 about the high calorie.
Okay, great. That's a great distinction. Yeah, because it's just trying to figure it out. Because these questions do get you thinking about things that you may not necessarily have considered before. So no, it's good. It starts to get it, because I know as well with age things have changed and are changing, and that's a lot of hormone and other things. And as we've discussed in previous episodes, things I'm working on as well. So this is eye-opening a little bit, which is good.
I will give away, a little bit more, which is to say, I'll read the questions to you now, which have significantly higher weighting, just so you understand these are the most important ones. So number 1, do you feel full and satisfied after an average size meal? That's a key question. Number 2, how much time do you spend in front of a screen? Number 3, how much time do you spend outside? Number 4, how difficult would you find it to fast for 24 hours? And number 5, how much time do you spend per day thinking about food? You could also base it on just those 5 if you wanted to simplify. Certainly if you said yes to all 5 of those, even if you said yes, no to a lot of the others, you could still mark yourself as likely leptin resistant. But honestly, I don't know if that would ever happen, that you would say yes to all 5 of those and no to all the rest. That's the thing, because these symptoms do tend to go together, and that's the interesting thing. So full disclosure, this is not my issue. I had a personal experience with it, but that was someone else in my life. I've always had, if anything, low levels of leptin resistance and maybe low levels of ghrelin as well. And sure enough, it's in my genetics. When I looked at it, I was like, oh, I have a tendency to not have leptin resistance. So again, there is a genetic component to this as well that's really, really important.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. I mean, because as far as the understanding certain things as well, which you were bringing up, that sometimes, well, my understanding was that leptin resistance and insulin resistance often go hand in hand. Like there's one that's been
Often.
Yes, it's been creeping up, and it's just these things that we don't necessarily know that are there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think they're caused by similar things in terms of the hibernation theory that I talked about, in terms of the toxins, the inflammation, well, the toxins and infection, which then leads to inflammation. So there's definitely a connection, but I do see some people with one and not the other. It does happen. More like to have insulin resistance without leptin resistance, honestly, than the other way around. I think this quiz is probably the shortest of all the quizzes as well. And I think it's maybe not, it's just because there's less research into leptin than a lot of the other hormones, rather than because it wouldn't be possible to potentially come up with more questions. But anyway, I think they cover it well. I found that that's a very decent way of evaluating. And so, what if you have low leptin resistance score? Keep it up, and well done. And keep checking on future episodes as we talk about the other hormonal imbalances to, if you are overweight, certainly, to see if any of those apply to you instead as the root cause. And I would be confident that at least one of them will be. That's the way it is. It's always one hormonal imbalance or another, and usually, as you say, several. Often they go together. That make it hard to lose weight. So, but what if you got a high score or even a moderately high score? What do you do about it? Well, let's look at the mainstream advice, and then I'll share some of the kind of breakthroughs that I had as well investigating this. So, mainstream advice first is pretty similar to the mainstream advice about diet in general. So, and honestly, it's stuff that I agree with. So, eating high protein with every meal, eating, real whole foods rather than processed foods, eating meals, trying to eat meals and not snack. So this is more obvious with insulin than leptin, but it is important for leptin as well. I would say that in my experience, although I haven't seen research for this, that it dysregulates leptin as much as everything else to never not be eating. Like, your body has to have periods where it is not eating for inflammation to go down, for the lymph to drain, for the digestive system to go through its whole cleaning protocol. Like, basically, when you are eating, you are kind of turning off stress, and that's one of the reasons people do it. We'll talk about that when we get into the cortisol episode. But you're also turning off detoxification to a large degree. Every time you're eating, your body is not detoxifying. And so that builds up a bunch of stuff, which then leads to inflammation, which then leads to things like leptin resistance and insulin resistance. So eating meals, I would say, a big part. Reducing processed food, reducing high fructose, refined fructose things specifically. So movement is really key. Not necessarily extremely intense gym workout movement, although there's a place for that potentially, but only potentially. And Dr. Kruse talks about this. If it creates more stress in you, then it may be counterproductive. So that's a case-by-case basis. But walking and low high volume, low intensity exercise like walking, like swimming, anything like that. I don't even want to put yoga in this category. It's really like, it's more that rhythmic movement, which I think is so helpful. Rhythmic, constant, but low intensity movement, which is so helpful and has been shown to have all kinds of benefits. If it's appropriate, high intensity training as well, absolutely has been shown to be effective at reducing leptin resistance. High quality sleep. I realize this is easier said than done because sleep is an unconscious process. But facilitating it as much as possible with the right environment, for instance, and the right support is really great. I would say that looking insulin as well cannot be ignored. So stay tuned for the next episode where we talk about that. And then the other hormones as well. So none of this is in a vacuum. I talked about how cortisol can be really important. Talked about how leptin can be really important. In fact, of all the 5 hormones that we identify in the hormetic system, probably the least obviously tied to it is estrogen, even though estrogen is something created by fat tissues just like leptin is. But both estrogen and leptin kind of increase the production of it by fat tissues increases along with inflammation, so they're definitely tied to each other. So I guess all the other hormones, light environment, like we talked about earlier. So making sure you get enough sleep, but what some of the things you can do about that is to reduce your exposure of especially blue light and bright light late at night. Actually increase your exposure of bright light during the daytime, as we talked about a little bit. So all of those kind of things, stuff you may have heard of before, but now you have a specific reason to actually implement them. If some people just want to lose weight and that's all they care about. And if eating too much because you don't feel satiated is the reason or one of the primary reasons why you can't lose weight, and then you've realized, hopefully, listening to this episode, watching this episode, that leptin resistance is the problem. It's not lack of discipline. It's not lack of willpower. It's not laziness. It's not all those kind of things that they say. All of that is nonsense. Maybe I should have addressed that earlier, but if it is lack of discipline or lack of willpower or whatever, then it's a hormonal situation. It's not like a deficiency in your character or anything like that. That's my take on it, having really researched the science of it. So if you're now motivated to do those lifestyle changes because you really want to lose weight, then fantastic. Then my goal is achieved with this episode. But there are other non-lifestyle things that you can do as well. And so that leads me, I guess, into talking about the ingredients which I discovered while researching this subject.
In an ideal world, you'd meet all of your nutritional needs in the form of vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, and more from the foods you eat. However, unless you prepare all of your food at home from scratch using the highest quality ingredients possible, the reality is that most of us need some nutritional support. Most of us need to take supplements if we want to look, feel, and perform at our best on a consistent daily basis. And this is especially true if you have genes that give you an elevated need of certain nutrients. And this is where Feel Younger can help. What I love about Feel Younger is that they offer a huge range of quality supplements and healthcare products formulated and endorsed by Elwin Robinson, including must-haves like magnesium glycinate and vitamins B12, D3, and K2. And they do it at affordable prices with free shipping for orders over $50 without ever compromising on quality, purity, or potency. To learn more about how Feel Younger supplements can give your health a boost while supporting this podcast, please visit feelyounger.net and use promo code Rejuvenate to get 20% off your first order. That's promo code Rejuvenate for 20% off your first order at feelyounger.net.
Leptin resistance. African mango is something I'd heard of a few years ago. African mango seed extract specifically. And I'd seen it, honestly, in catalogs under like weight loss herbs. And I had just dismissed it because I dismissed all weight loss supplements because I just thought that they were all a lie. But when I actually looked into this, there was a significant amount of evidence that showed that it does actually work via this specific mechanism of leptin resistance. So I think this might be why it doesn't maybe universally work, because not everyone is overweight because of leptin resistance. It's a factor for a lot of people, sure, but there's also a lot of people that it's not a factor for. But I can also see why, and when I looked it up, not just into the studies, but looking at reviews on forums, reviews on places where they sell it, stuff like that, a lot of people are saying that actually worked. A lot of people are also saying that it didn't. And so I think this is why, because of the mechanism that it uses. Yes, I have a list of half a dozen studies here, Chrissy. I think I picked more than usual for this because I was so needing to be convinced that this would actually work. But I'm just going to read one of them for the sake of time. So this one, this is African mango seed extract. Significantly reduces body weight and improves metabolic parameters in overweight humans in a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled investigation, which is interesting. So the background, it works through critical pathways including PPAR gamma, leptin, adiponectin, and glycerol-free phosphate dehydrogenase. Obviously, the one that we're interested in right now is the one leptin that they mentioned in the middle there. The study was therefore aimed at evaluating the effects of this extract on body weight and associated metabolic parameters, including leptin. So this study, 102 healthy, overweight, and or obese volunteers, all with a BMI above 25, randomly divided into two groups. The groups received on a daily basis either 150 milligrams of this extract, or so not even a very large amount. I think we have 250 milligrams in our formula. This group was randomly divided into two groups. So they either got 150 milligrams of that extract, which is actually less than ours. Ours is 250 milligrams, or a placebo, 30 to 60 minutes before lunch and dinner. And they tested 4, 8, and 10 weeks into the study. And what were the results? Significant improvements in body weight, body fat, and waist circumference, as well as plasma total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, blood glucose, C-reactive protein, adiponectin, and leptin levels were observed in the group who had the product versus the placebo group.
Wow.
And so it's saying, yeah, exactly. Mango extract administered 150 milligrams twice daily. Oh, there you go. Okay, so they're having 150 milligrams twice daily. Our formula contains 250 milligrams. Before meals to overweight and obese human volunteers favorably impacts body weight and a variety of parameters characteristic of metabolic syndrome. This is the first double-blind randomized placebo-controlled clinical trial regarding the anti-obesity and lipid profile modulating effects of this extract. And so, yeah, that's a good one because it's it's a gold standard type of study. It's got a reasonable amount of people, over 100. It's double-blind placebo-controlled, and it's a significant impacts. I wish I could read to you the actual numbers, but they don't include it in this abstract, probably to make you pay to actually get it. But feel free to look that up and tell me if you think they're exaggerating. Even if they're exaggerating, even if it's a moderate benefit rather than a significant benefit, still pretty awesome if it does what it says it does. And as I said, I do have a list of way more studies. If you really want to see them all, put it in the comments and I will share with you all of them. So next ingredient, Ceylon Cinnamon. This is a mainstay, and we've had this on Feel Younger for a couple of years now. And I wrote the product page for it, and I knew that it was helpful for blood sugar control and a bunch of other stuff. I didn't really know about the leptin benefits, to be honest, until I actually looked into it. So this study is titled "The Effects of Cinnamon Supplementation on Adipokines and Appetite-Regulating Hormones," which, leptin being key here. A systemic review of randomized clinical trials. So the recent studies have indicated that cinnamon is a safe and cost-effective treatment for improving body weight, lipid profiles, insulin resistance as well. Like I said, this is good for both, and blood pressure. This systemic review aims to summarize the effect of cinnamon supplementation on appetite regulating hormones. They just did a bunch of research of a bunch of different databases, they say here. Okay, the results. This systemic review included 6 clinical trials, a total of 363 participants. among which only one study was performed on children, and 2 investigations were conducted on obese participants. I guess the other 3 were on normal, healthy adults by process of elimination. A decreasing effect was found in the level of leptin and visfatin after cinnamon supplementation. 2 out of 3 studies examined adiponectin levels and revealed non-significant effects of cinnamon consumption on these parameters. 2 studies evaluated ghrelin levels and found an increase after cinnamon supplementation. And it even has an impact on GLP-1, but it was inconsistent. So if we go to the conclusion, the result of this systemic review indicated the increasing effect of cinnamon supplementation on ghrelin and decreasing effect on leptin and visfatin levels. Yeah, it will, reduce leptin resistance. As I said, it also has a very significant effect on insulin resistance as well, which is the other reason that I included it. But honestly, it was one of the only ingredients I found that was really effective for leptin, so that's why I included it. And what's the word? In practice, we found that it is effective at helping to reduce appetite. So that's a good one. Not as much evidence for it with leptin as the African mango, though, to be honest. Then we have, but really the African mango is unparalleled in that regard. Next, we have alpha lipoic acid, which a lot of people have heard of. As an antioxidant, sometimes as a heavy metal detoxifier, sometimes as a liver supporter. But what about leptin? This study is called Alpha Lipoic Acid Effect on Leptin and Adiponectin Concentrations, a systemic review and meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials. So they did the usual thing. They searched every database and a bunch of different directories. Okay, results. 8 studies were included and 7 studies in meta-analysis. The overall effect suggested a significant decrease in serum leptin concentrations. Conclusion, our results reveal alpha lipoic acid decreased leptin and increased adiponectin, especially in studies lasting more than 8 weeks. We still need more studies with different doses, intervention duration, and separately on male and female. Yeah, okay, so it's early days on it. Alpha lipoic acid has this laundry list of benefits, and alpha lipoic acid is another ingredient that's also very effective for blood glucose control, insulin resistance, neuropathy even, a lot of things related to blood glucose dysregulation. So I wanted to include it, and because it has this study showing that they reduce leptin, I put it in the leptin category. And then lastly, chromium. I'm pretty sure this was Dr. Miriam's suggestion, because I'd always thought of chromium as more of a blood glucose thing. So this one says, effects of chromium supplementation on body composition, leptin, ghrelin levels, and other biochemical parameters in obese women. The link here is to the full study, but I'm going to skip ahead to the results. Chromium Picolinate reduced weight and hip circumference, but had no effect on BMR, body weight, BMI, etc. Plasma leptin levels were decreased. So it didn't really have a significant impact on a bunch of other stuff that you would think it would actually, like insulin and blood glucose in this case, but it did reduce leptin and it did reduce the size of the waist, which honestly is a classic indicator of leptin and insulin resistance when a person has weight around the waist more. So although obviously with leptin resistance you can put on weight everywhere if you're overeating, but still overall you'd expect it more around the belly than anywhere else. So again, not a huge difference, and on its own I would not sell a leptin resistant supplement where the only ingredient was chromium, but as it has been found to reduce leptin levels significantly and the waist size, if not much else, I thought it would be a good adjunct to the more powerful ingredients in this formula.
Now, I see on this study it's saying 200 micrograms a day. Is your formula, is it roughly around that as well, or are you using a different amount?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, exactly 200 micrograms, in fact. There's not really a lot of evidence for this, but I'm a bit concerned that you can overdo it with chromium, so I didn't want to do any more. But 200 micrograms is a very reasonable amount, which you're not going to have too much of. You're not going to overdose on ever. And it's like a standard amount, I guess, that you would often find in supplementation. So yeah, and it was enough to have the leptin lowering effect. So these ingredients, as I said, I have found to be, just as effective as a low dose of GLP-1 in this obviously very limited capacity. When I did the research, I was not surprised. And the only thing I was surprised about is that there were a bunch of studies, and obviously I've only talked about a couple of them here, that showed that it's possible to significantly reduce leptin levels. And therefore leptin resistance, and therefore increased satiety. Sometimes you see it in the actual study where, like the African mango is the most obvious, where, everything went down, body weight, body mass index, hip weight, waist weight, everything. Sometimes it doesn't show up as obviously, like with the chromium where it was only a couple of measures. But, in either case, the bottom line is if you increase satiety, is it going to resolve all your weight issues? Not necessarily, because that's why there's 5 types, not just one. Again, so this is the thing that always makes this a little bit tricky, and why I'm glad that we've... at some point I'd like to do studies where the person assesses all the types they are, takes formulas for all the types, and then see the effect of that on things like body mass index, body fat percentage, if that's possible. It's not particularly easy to measure if we can do that, things like that. But anyway, one step at a time. To start off with, we're just going to do each separate formula, which, as I say, is a miracle. 99.99% of other supplement companies don't do that. So don't get me wrong, we're happy just to be able to do this at all. And very much appreciate your participation. I suspect if you're still watching / listening, you're probably going to participate, and we appreciate that very much.
It's quite a list of ingredients, Elwin. So tell me now, what is somebody supposed to do moving forward?
Well, obviously they can look into those ingredients and potentially try them on their own without any involvement from us, as well as all the lifestyle changes and things that we talked about earlier. But what I would encourage and invite you to do is to participate in, and you may have seen me announce this in the previous episode, and you may not. So first thing is that this new project, the Hormetics Weight Optimization System, is helping people to identify which of the 5 or more hormonal imbalances they have that may be leading to them struggling to lose weight or to keep weight off. And then I have developed, along with Dr. Miriam, a formula for each of those 5 imbalances with the key ingredients. And in this case, the key ingredients that we just talked about. And so if you go to feelyounger.net/leptin, you will find the Hormetics leptin balance formula that contains those exact ingredients I described in the amounts that I talked about, which are the ones that are found to be clinically effective. But each of those ingredients are found to be clinically effective. I've just talked about the research. What about the combination? My understanding is that it will be more clinically effective by far. But here's the thing. You can help to actually work that out with us. So the exciting thing is that the Hormetics weight optimization system, all 5 formulas have been involved in a clinical trial research study, which means that you have the option, if you buy it, once you check out, you will be invited to join that clinical research trial. And if you do, there will be a substantial, I can't remember, there's a word you are not allowed to use, but thank you, I think is the word, to thank you for participating. That will then allow you to buy several more bottles if you want, or to buy a different product if you didn't feel that it was effective for you for whatever reason. The only challenge with this study, of course, is that if someone has several hormonal imbalances, for them to have the best results, they're going to need to address all of them. But whatever. That's not how these studies are done. They're done one product at a time, so we're going to assess the impact of one product at a time. So I would highly encourage you to participate in that study. It'll just be a case of answering some questions periodically. There's several benefits of it. So the first benefit, that's purely selfish, because of course that's the most important thing for you, is that it helps you to track if this actually works. How many times have you taken a supplement and taken it for a while and be like, oh, I don't really know if it works? For most people, I think it's the vast majority of the time, right? As I told in that study earlier, like, it was only because I was so interested and kept asking and kept tracking that I discovered how effective that combination of leptin lowering or sensitizing ingredients actually was for my wife. Whereas, if it had been like anything else, she might have taken it for a while and stopped taking it and never really noticed that was the reason why her appetite went down considerably. And so I think that's the case. Sure, there are a lot of supplements that don't work, but I think there's also the case that there are a lot of supplements that we just don't even realize work because we're not tracking it very effectively. So this will help you to effectively track if this is actually working for you. You can see that I believe in this product, because would I want that if I didn't think it was going to work? Obviously not. So I believe this product is going to work, which is why I want you to track the results in the effectiveness of it. This is a great way for you to do that absolutely free. Then, on a non-selfish basis, you can actually contribute to scientific research, but then also the world in general, by showing that non-pharmaceutical interventions can actually be effective. And I mean, I hope that's the case for you. Obviously, a product doesn't have to have 100% success rate for it to be shown to be effective, because every person is different and there's different stuff going on. But what we're looking for is at least a statistically significant improvement in leptin resistance and weight loss as a result of using this formula. Appetite control, then therefore weight loss using this formula. And I hope it is 100 out of 100 people, or however many people do it. But I'm just saying, like, even if it doesn't work for you, which I hope is never the case, you participating in this trial is helpful and encouraged. So participating, sharing your honest feedback, honest in both directions. Don't assume it's not working. Don't assume it's working. Actually track it along with the system. And it will guide you through it. It'll make it very simple for you. It's, like ticking boxes and kind of writing the odd word here and there. This is nothing difficult. But yeah, going along with that system will help to really change the dynamic of the world, which, as it is right now, I talked about in a previous episode. It's kind of set up so that research is really only done on pharmaceutical products and maybe on lifestyle changes, which people often find hard to do. But things like this that are the most threatening to those established interests, because it's just taking something it's pretty simple for people to do. Do we want people to have the awareness that something as safe and affordable as this could be as effective or more effective as a bunch of other stuff that is maybe less safe? Do you want to contribute to that? Do you want to participate in that? I know I do. So if you're also a resounding yes, that's also a reason. And again, I want honest feedback. That's the number one thing we want. But yeah. So if you would like to participate in that, please go ahead, go to feelyounger.net/leptin and go ahead and get however many bottles you want. And remember to enroll in the clinical trial afterwards and participate in it. Your participation will be very much appreciated and will be very helpful for you too.
With something like this, Elwin, when they're going to potentially go down this road of this product that you are working on here, will they have to change anything they're doing, or they just keep doing things as they've done, but the thing that they're bringing in is this supplement product?
Technically, if they change anything else, that would skew the trial. But of course, in reality, people do a bunch of stuff all the time and don't do a bunch of stuff all the time. So We will not be giving any additional I've given recommendations in this video for things that you should do in general, but obviously if you were to only do them during the trial, then that would skew the results. So no, like apply these lifestyle, maybe apply these lifestyle things now. Then by the time the bottles arrive, that will already be your baseline. Then try the products. But yeah, no. We're not going to stop you doing whatever you do, because that is the natural environment of you that the test is going on in. But yeah, if we suddenly start getting everyone to do something specific, then that would skew the trial.
Okay, great. And I think so everybody knows to go to feelyounger.net/leptin. And is there a certain point where there's a certain amount of people that you need to take, that the openness for the clinical trial stops?
It's a great question. No, I don't know if we'll stop it. Obviously, it is costing us some money to do it, but really, the more people that participate in it, the stronger it will be. And in fact, if we get enough people do it, and we manage to earn enough, we will then take that money and reinvest it in a double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial, which costs significantly more. But that will be the plan. Now, with that, it's going to be harder to try and get people to do it, because there's a 50% chance you're going to get something that is nothing, that doesn't work. So, I don't know exactly what additional costs would be involved in that, other than the cost of actually running it. But I know the costs of running it are considerable. So, no, really, the more people that participate for now, the better. Let's say you've already done the trial. Does it help us for you to then continue in buying the product if you like it? Absolutely, because that means that we have that money that we can then reinvest in doing the more indisputable trial from a mainstream scientific point of view. But I will say that the vast majority of products do not have any trials and any evidence for them. And I've seen million, perhaps even billion-dollar supplement industries spring up around a product that has an ingredient that only like a handful of people have ever participated in a trial in, or sometimes even know people, only animals. Honestly, even having some is better than none, and the more the better. So we're happy to pay for it if you're happy to do it for now. For the foreseeable. It's just that we might upgrade it to a better quality one. So yeah, keep participating. But I say better quality one. The one that we're starting now is still perfectly scientifically valid. There are loads and loads and loads of studies where there are not double-blind placebo, and still they're considered perfectly legitimate, because it's still evidence in the end. It's, is there a statistically significant difference in people who do it versus the average population? So yeah.
How long do you think? I mean, I know, because I was going to ask, how will somebody know if it's working? But I think if they just go back and take that quiz again and see if their answers or if their score is getting less. But my other question would be, or is a supplement like this something that somebody should continue to take and maintain for their overall health and wellness?
That's a good question. I would say that the most obvious, I guess, example it's working, and this is what my life experience is. You go on the scales and it says less, right? Or perhaps you'd already lost the weight, but you did it through something extreme. Then you go on the scales and you stay the same, but you're no longer struggling and denying yourself and all the rest of it. You're no longer having to apply massive amounts of willpower. So either through a difference in the scale or a difference in your quality of maintaining that weight on the scale, how your quality of life while maintaining that weight on the scale would be the most obvious final thing, I would say, rather than just doing the quiz again. I mean, I realize in the real world that's what people want, right? They either want to lose weight, or they want to not struggle so much, not have to struggle so much to lose weight. So that would be really the conclusion that we're going for with people. Now, with weight, I will say body composition is better than weight. There are things that help you lose weight, and then a lot of it is just water weight and muscle weight. So like in an ideal world, you would be doing something that assists actual body composition, but that's not particularly easy. like for my wealthy clients, I'll sometimes say to actually go and get a DEXA scan, because that will, give you something exact, but that may not be affordable, may not be available to you. So, I mean, that would be the ultimate, but it's certainly not required for the trial. But otherwise, yeah, like waist size is another good one, if not body weight. Maybe sometimes neck size, sometimes hip size as well. Those are some other measurements that are a little bit better at assessing fat rather than just weight. So those are things you might want to consider as well.
This is a great overview. Really looking forward to seeing everybody go and take this clinical trial and get started, especially if you think this is something that pertains to you. Before we finish, Elwin, is there any last final thoughts that you would like to share with everyone?
Yeah, share this, especially share the section with the quiz, and especially share the section that invites people to do the clinical trial if you think that's, they are someone who this product could help.
Beautiful. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We continue to come here and support you guys as best we can. Please make sure you leave your comments below. It really helps us to help you. And we know what you're thinking, and we are there all the time. Elwin definitely dedicates a lot of time to responding in those comments. So as always, and again, thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed that, I recommend watching our latest episode, which you can do by clicking above. And make sure to subscribe, like the video, comment, and share with anyone who you think might appreciate it. Thank you.